Hang on, stand by. I will address the elephant in the room. I am not Coach Dakota. I am not Santa Claus. This is Nick4ATick taking over slow markets. How is everyone doing? I know I want Dakota too, because I'm not good at this whole Globex trading thing. In fact, my P&L shows it. But we're going to try to have some fun. Audio good, visual good. I know we had some technical difficulties there. Thank y'all for bearing with me. I was too busy delivering presents, hopefully, to this market and allowing us to continue this Santa rally higher. I know we gapped up to start the Globex session here. It looks like we had a little retest down lower. We're continuing to the upside, but I know I just got done doing my show, stepping in here to help out my sick friend, Coach Dakota. We wish him well. He's still battling his cold, his strep, whatever actually it was that's, affecting him. And I'm no surprise. The guy doesn't stop talking for, day in and day out to deliver us good content, good, market insights. So naturally, when you talk nonstop almost every day, your throat, your immune system may get a little susceptible to a cold. So we wish Coach DBA well. It sounds like he will be joining me tomorrow morning on Fast Markets. If he's feeling better, hopefully he is. So, no worries. Hopefully we all get him back and we can have some fun. But how is everyone doing? How was everyone's trading week last week? Did everyone enjoy this absolute violence of a Thursday and Friday? I guess it was Wednesday and Thursday. And Friday. I can't remember what day FOMC was. I just got done giving a newborn a bath and rushing up here to continue this show. So we are all good. I apologize again for the technical difficulties. We were having some issues on my end, unfortunately, to get us squared away and live to YouTube. So I hope everyone is had a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Sunday. It is going to be a lighter trading week for me, for the markets. I think for everybody who matters sitting at a trading desk at the end of the day. I would expect volume to completely fall off a cliff, shortly after the open on Tuesday. It is a half day on Tuesday, so we might have one and a half full trading days this week, and then you kind of you roll the dice a little bit. With the 26th and 27th, Thursday and Friday, who's back at the desk? How much are people really going to be actively trading into the end of the year? I think a lot of it will depend on the first 2 days of this week. I hope volume doesn't dry up, but I'm going to hopefully find a good trade tomorrow, a good trade early in the session on Christmas Eve, if anything presents itself. And then before the Euro close, probably in the first 90 minutes, I would imagine on Tuesday, I'm going to lock it up and potentially be done really aggressively trading for the rest of the year and come back, January 2nd, 3rd, whatever day that actually is. And pick up the trading for 2025. But I think there's nothing worse than, trading on a holiday week, especially during Thanksgiving or Christmas, when you should be focused on spending time with family. You should be having fun. And this is a good time of the year where if you had a good week with this violence last week, if you caught this flush or were long on Friday, it's a good time to, if you can't find one or two good trades in the early part of this week, or maybe you do, maybe it's time to lock yourself out for the rest of the year. And, come into 2025 with a fresher head and get to enjoy the holidays. Nothing's worse than, being on the wrong side of a trade on Christmas Eve and then you sitting there stewing about it, all day on the 24th and 25th, and then try to come back the 26th to salvage whatever the rest of this week may be. And it may not be ideal trading conditions. So with that being said, guys, be smart this week. It's going to be short. It's going to be low volume right after, kind of the early parts of Christmas Eve session. And then it'll probably die, honest to God, until January. I wouldn't expect too much with New Year's Day and Eve kind of falling in the middle of the week, just like Christmas does. So we will take what comes to us. I know I am not Coach Dakota, so we're going to see if we can find some trades here. We're going to take a look at a couple things. I want to see the micro Bitcoin chart as well, since Bitcoin kind of broke back below 100,000. I'm curious to see if there's a trading opportunity in this week. I might take a trade in a combine. I'm not going to risk my live account because, as you guys know, I am a horrible overnight trader. I am probably one of the worst. It's just not my market. It's slow. I end up oversizing. It's just never... If it's not volatile, like if there's not a lot of movement, if we're not kind of like on election night, there's nothing for me to really get in and really dig in and trade. So we'll see what we can find here. I know it's probably not what you're going to be used to, but hopefully we can find something. I did see Coach Dakota himself from his deathbed, whatever he's on these days. He did throw a Nikkei long in, because of course he did. And he's already well in, I think, like $5,000 in profit. So hopefully that trade works out for him. He's got his risk set. He knows his profit targets. But I did happen to see that on X, Coach Dakota showing that he's already long for the Nikkei and is holding for some high that looks like a very large profit target. So hopefully that trade works out whenever it does for him, but we'll have to see. We're going to do a quick recap of, my Sunday prep from my market kickoff show, and then we'll dive into some other markets and see if there's anything we can find to find a good trade here. And then, as always, guys, I'm going to, if I don't know if Andrew already threw it in the chat. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see. Nope. I don't have the Topstep risk disclosure off the top of my head. But as always, this is not a signals class. This is potentially a trading opportunity where we're going to have some fun. But nothing I'm doing here is any sort of a signal. As I've already said, I am not a great overnight trader. So we're going to just see if we can find some opportunities. We're going to talk about some opportunities that I think could manifest themselves tomorrow during the actual New York session. But I don't know if Andrew has the risk disclosure off the top of his head that he can throw in the chat for me. But we'll see if we can have some fun here this evening. Thank you guys for bearing with me. I know the technical difficulties got us off a little later than we expect. Thank you, Andrew. So as Andrew just posted in the chat, no trades I take, I would say, to anybody should be following for a lot of reasons. But the biggest is you're going to be on a delay. And, as you guys know, trading these markets has risk, especially the overnight session. So we're going to keep it light, keep it tight, and see if we can find any good opportunities here for this hour. But let's recap what we talked about at 5 p.m. when the markets opened. We talked a little bit about last week's distribution. So we were consolidating for a couple weeks up here at the all-time high. We hit air horns. We were just kind of balancing, chopping around. And then Jerome Powell ruined Christmas, sent us down the elevator shaft with a bit of language during the press conference that I think spooked the markets, as well as the dot plot and the forecast for 2025's cuts being basically less than the market is expecting. So naturally, we're going to have to wait and see, do we see some repositioning based on that this week before the end of the year, or do a lot of the big institutions and larger players wait until January to really kind of firm up their books for that plan, for that new dot plot, where the Fed may not be cutting as aggressively as they had hoped? And even Jay Powell himself alluded to not potentially even thinking they were going to cut at the December meeting. It was very loose language, but he kind of said it without actually saying that they were almost not cutting. So the market also didn't like that. But only 50 basis points of cuts being projected in the Fed's dot plot. for 2025. So we'll see how that evolves. As you guys know, they've been just throwing throwing darts at the wall and hoping something sticks at the end of the day with some of these cuts and how they've been forecasting. And even though inflation was defeated well over a year ago, allegedly, we are still seeing it extremely sticky in the 3% mark. So we'll see how things evolve in the new year with the new administration as well, and how that may affect the markets. But for the time being, we sold down off after FOMC. We kind of came back up a little bit, and then we finally saw the Asia session, the London session, kind of push us back down and broke below that FOMC low, made a low in the pre-market, and then we pretty much shot out of a cannon on Friday. So with that being said, my prep for this week, going into the early parts of this week, really just going to be, honest to God, guys, up into Christmas Eve. I have a hard time really taking, I will take any move after that from the 26, 27 and into the new year with a bit of a grain of salt, just because of the low volume. But for the early part of this week, I'm going to be using 60-30s kind of spot as a weekly pivot. The market came up, pierced it, got to 50, came back down to 40s. And then Jay and I were talking on Fast Markets on Friday. There was a larger seller there, and eventually the market just could not push us back up to that level, that spot. So I'm going to be using that to kind of see if buyers can continue to build volume above that 60-30 spot. I have a lot of comfort kind of longing this up towards this 60-80 spot, which is roughly going to be the larger option strike that I think you guys hear me talk about on Topstep TV every once in a while. But this would equate to roughly 6,000 SPX. Which I would expect the market to potentially tag this week if we don't get violence the way we saw last Christmas. Historically, the Santa rally is going to be bullish, and this week should be bullish if anything with seasonality and just the way the market typically behaves. But if you guys have not been paying attention, the market has not been behaving the way it typically behaves. If you look at things like seasonality and just the usual return that we see year over year. So the market's just been up and to the right. So I kind of throw statistics and certain things out at this point. So we'll see. Last year, Christmas Eve was rather violent with the half day. So we'll have to just take a peek at what volume really shows in the early parts of this week, and if real traders are actually going to be at the desk, if things actually move. But if it is low volume and we don't see a sell in the early part of this week, I would expect us just to kind of build above this and grind back up towards, like I said, closer to 6,100 on ES. But filling in some of this volume kind of from that flush from FOMC over the last few weeks, I would expect some of this to kind of be filled in if we continue to kind of slowly drift up and grind. So the logic would be buy the dip if you get it. I would have loved to potentially tomorrow buy somewhere like where we opened and shot out of the cannon to start this overnight session, but we'll have to kind of see what the open brings us. As I said, I'm not too interested in getting, super bullish right here. If we can get above 60-30, I would happily look to long this, but for the time being, that is my pivot. But we're pretty much just kind of teetering around where the highs were off that initial gap up open. Also be aware that since we do have that gap, as we know, eventually they do end up getting closed. We don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. We don't know if it's going to be in the overnight, but they do have a tendency to get filled eventually. So no telling when, but something that I always will keep in the back of my mind trading this week is until it gets filled, I'm just waiting for, I guess, that opportunity to short this down towards the gap fill. And as I was saying, when we kind of came on, guys, feel free to throw questions into the chat. We will get to as many as we can during this hour to see if we can, answer everybody's questions. So let's jump over to see if NQ is moving. I think it is also teetering around that kind of gap up high. It is. And NQ had a similar story. If you were paying attention on Friday, Coach Jay and I were talking about this 810 spot being resistance. And I actually went back and looked at my previous week's prep, and even saw Coach Dakota during last Sunday's slow markets was talking about this as being potentially support, potentially resistance, just based on, how we had kind of sold off from it a few times. So definitely a confluence of a few people that are really engaged in these markets, kind of being aligned on that same spot. And Jay and I were talking about, with this trend day to the upside that we saw, where could you potentially sell it? Because I was not, after we kind of broke out, after I had gotten stopped, I went short at like 270s before we really established the trend day. Yeah, I was way back down here, kind of playing off this this 300 spot potentially being a reoffer. And once I got stopped out, we were pretty much off to the races. So looking at NQ as well this week, I'd be looking to see, do sellers step back in at this 800 spot for a reoffer, somewhere between kind of this 770s, maybe even 750s to 800s. Do sellers show up again? Because this has kind of been a pivot the last, going back, I guess, a couple weeks. What was this, last week, 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks ago as well. We were kind of sitting there. It's acted as support, and now potentially is it going to act as resistance? So that could be a good spot to potentially look at a reoffer to short this back down, possibly down towards the 500s to 450s. I don't know if how much weakness we may get this week, if we get any at all. Just knowing historically, it is a very bullish week into the end of the year. But if we reoffered there, the first place that you're going to find buyers is back towards this high volume node here, down towards 450s up to kind of the 540 type area. So on NQ, I'm actually very curious to see if we break out above this kind of 680s, 690s spot, where potentially maybe we take a breakout long. Let's see. What is Friday's? What is that candle? To about 750 maybe. I could see us potentially rotating towards. If I'm looking at, I guess that's point of control. We're kind of sitting at one of the areas from Friday that was acting as a higher volume kind of resistance type spot. So nothing's really moving. We kind of broke out. We went down kind of, I thought we were maybe going to fill this gap. As I was finishing up my show, we kind of sold off a little bit on NQ, about 80 points. But now we've just we repaired that entire move and are now back near the highs. So let's jump over to GC. So GC is still pretty much sitting at the spot it was when I got off market kickoff. We were sitting, I think, right around like 39s and change. So we haven't moved too far. But gold, another violent week in GC. We were talking about this on market kickoff as well, but gold kind of fell back down towards 2,600 and now is back in this larger consolidation range that we've been in for a couple of weeks, where you, in theory, should be fading 2,700s and looking to buy kind of in the 2,630s to 2,640s area. So the same is true. If you're getting long, this is a decent spot to try a long for not a longer time frame one, but for a move at least back up, towards 2,660s, this point of control where we've just been kind of chopping and having a lot of indecision in GC. I'm still very bullish gold right now. I would like to see a breakout above, out of this range, back up into this kind of 2,800s area up here. So if you got over 27 again, I probably am getting long and looking for that trip maybe back to go retest up towards 2,800. I'm looking for 3,000 this year in the early parts of 2025, maybe even Q2 if we don't get the move just yet. But I'm looking to still be long on a swing time frame for gold, but I don't know when I'm going to take it. I am completely flat in GC. I will take that swing eventually if we get the opportunity in micros. But I would love to potentially find it. I was long. I guess it was on the older contract. It was like 2550s. I was literally waiting for the, we weren't quite in like labor yet. We were still in the early stages of waiting for the birth of my child. So I was bored. Everyone was asleep. It was the middle of the night and we kind of tagged like 2550s. And I took a small long for like $3,000, like whatever. I think I covered it like 2570s. And then it did this shortly thereafter. Yeah. Cause my child was born on November 15th. So I covered somewhere during this chop. And then naturally we did that right after. I took it in full minis, but in my personal account, but I wasn't planning on doing the longer swing time frame type trade. But that is still a good area to potentially looking to buy somewhere around that 2550s at the absolute, kind of low, but somewhere in this consolidation that we were in under 2,600, if we got an excess low and I saw buyers coming in, I would love to get long for a wider move. But we're still just kind of chopping around. Even the indices still sitting, NQ still sitting under 680s. Oh, now it might be breaking out. Let's jump back. NQ still stuck. Let's see if I actually want to see if this will break out to the upside. Let's jump to a 5-minute. There it goes. There it goes. All right. So yeah, as I said, do we break out above this kind of 680 spot for a trip up towards 720s, 730s? Maybe even 750s. It's going. I'm seeing all positive delta on this move too. This is just going. Yeah, so I guess that was the play. Let's see if it breaks above 700, I would imagine this is going to run. I'm actually gonna go long here for a quick breakout. I don't recommend anyone following me. I just want to see. I'm gonna send one to see if I will kill this rally. All right, so I'm long one mini. Stop's gonna be no, not that low. Let's put it just below that old high. All right. So we're going to see how that plays out. I want this to break out and potentially go tag like 720s to 730s, maybe even to 750s. I'm a terrible Globex trader. So let's see if I just killed this breakout to the upside. I want to just prove something to myself, that I am not a terrible Globex trader and that I can trade a breakout maybe. I might have already missed it, to be honest. I think the breakout was longing 80s, not 90s, but we'll see. We'll see if this continues to go up towards the 700s. As I said, I want this 720. So I'm long one mini. This is a 50K combine. So I don't trade 50K combines, so we'll see how fast Nick ruins this too. But let's jump over. I know I hated talking about it on my show this evening. Oh God, CL. Let's jump back over to a 1 hour because I'm just going to complain about Crude again for another couple minutes. So there's nothing to do with Crude. It's dead to me until it breaks out of this range. It has been stuck between 67s and 71 for 3 months. And I hate it, if I'm being honest. There's nothing to do here. If you've been trading this every day, good for you. I don't exactly know where the opportunity may come outside of just playing the ranges, playing the edges. I will, once again, I said this on my show, when this multi-month consolidation finally does break, I am expecting it to be like absolute fireworks one way or the other. Whether that's a trip back down towards this low at 63s or a trip all the way back up here towards 75s. I would imagine it is a pretty one-way move when it finally does break. I don't know why, with all of the geopolitical headlines, everything else going on, that it continues just to be so range bound. Has anyone been trading Crude? Honestly. Like, has anyone been trading Crude lately, like in the last couple of weeks, and actively made money? And I know we had 1 week where we kind of just trended to the upside, but otherwise it's been very, just choppy consolidation within a point or two. So nope, I hate it. No way. Yes. If you have traded, have you made money? Have you actually gotten a decent trade? I mean, this is like the Nick Dolby. This is my personal hell. I made this joke during market kickoff, but when if I am a bad person, if you believe in heaven or hell or whatever, and if I go to hell, this is the market that I will be trading. It is a forever range bound market with a lot of chop in between, just something to drive me insane, because that's what Crude is doing. Every week, I don't really trade it. I've probably taken maybe 2 to 5 trades this year in NCL across like every account that I have. It's not something I actively really want to trade, but I have to talk about it because we have so many Crude traders at Topstep, and we do it for my show since it's one of the big four of, active volume at Topstep that we all trade. So I talk about it, and I am not kidding. I get frustrated trying to help people even get an idea of prepping going back to October when we've been stuck in this range. So I've already spent too much time talking about it between my show and now this show. So I'm going to jump back to NQ because my trade has moved a few points. And I really kind of want to trade micro Bitcoin. It's not moved. Oh, it did. It went to 96. Is it going to actually break out above 700s? That would be nice. Has anyone taken trades in the overnight? We actually did get that wild gap up. Did anyone actually go long and catch that? In the chat, anybody? Or on ES, NQ, anything else that's been moving? Has anyone actively been trading tonight and made some money? Captured their points? Anyone already locked out for a good reason? Because you hit a trade already. Yep, I'm in since the start calling Q. Long 10 micros from 635s. Nice. That's a nice long. Because I saw it teetering back that like excess low below 600s. And I was seeing it kind of having trouble at the 630s. Kind of chopping, consolidating. And then we came back above it. And you have the 24-hour VWAP and things. And we just kind of broke right back up above it. I guess since the Globex open. But this trade's already pretty boring. This is why I don't trade Globex, guys. I'm just like, add more size to get points. But that's a terrible idea. I'm in a 50K combine. Let's see if this actually will break out above 700s. If not, I'm going to jump to micro Bitcoin because I want to short it. What is Bitcoin at? 94,629. I keep seeing outlandish bullish calls in Bitcoin, and I keep seeing people saying there's no long from this point until 80s, until 60s, until I saw somebody say 38s. I'm going to get stopped out on this. There it goes. All right. So stopped out. That might be the high for the time being. Couldn't get above 700s. Took my lick. Tried to get the breakout. The breakout should have been 80s, probably up towards, this 696 type spot. But I was late and wanted to see if we would keep going. So no worries. On to the next potential opportunity. Let's jump over to micro Bitcoin. So we had a gap down. I always forget that technically, since this is on the CME, it doesn't actually trade over the weekends. So yeah, we are. What did we do? Sorry, I'm like all confused because I don't actually look at this that often. Yeah, so we gapped down, kind of just been consolidating and chopping. Haven't really gotten a ton of movement. Actually, I expected more. Let me switch one chart on my other screen. Let's see. Let's see if we can find a decent area for an opportunity this week. I guess you could look for the gap fill somewhere up here towards 94, 500s, 600s as a spot to potentially reoffer this short. It's funny, I did get a long signal on my other one, but that was way earlier ago after the gap down. It was somewhere down here. Yeah, probably near that 94,000 mark. Since this was added to TopstepX. Have people actively been trading this? Has anyone traded this in their live account, in their XFAs regularly? Is anyone, since we have kind of had this, I guess this bullish move, I think it was, what was it, above like 84,000, the old all-time high, whatever it was in Bitcoin. Have people been trading this? I passed a combine with it. I only needed like 2,000. And it was during that period where Bitcoin kind of broke out to the upside. And I was just looking for things to get long, opportunities to get long in it when it was having that type of volatility. And I made like $1,000 because micro Bitcoin, you don't get your full size on TopstepX, so you're kind of capped on the 150Ks, I think, to 15. So I traded, I think I was building to a 15 and ended up riding it for a decent trade. But other than that 1 or 2 trades that I was doing during that day, I have not traded this. And I kind of want to, but I've been holding myself because it just seems like a great way where I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's a good way to get myself hurt for absolutely no reason. But we're not moving too much. I expected this to be more volatile so far to start the session. Oh, and now it's coming back up to my entry on NQ. Of course it is. Stops me out, takes off, back up. So that was an example of a late entry into the breakout. And I probably, like I said, I should have been long probably around the 80s, not the 90s for the breakout higher, but we live to take another trade. I'm trying to get better with my holding to my stops, not adding to positions in my live account, like letting the trade thesis play out and getting back in at another time. I did try that on Friday. I'm trying to do it more. I'm so used to, if my first trade is a winner, locking myself out or calling it a day. And I'm trying to get better about not snowballing trades when I have a losing trade, let's say off the back. I know my statistics on having a red day after having a losing trade or turning it into a team DLL is pretty high if my first trade is red. So I'm trying to get better about looking for the next good setup and getting, continuing just to take my normal trades without necessarily like sticking to my initial trade thesis and then getting stubborn, re-entering again in another spot that's a little bit higher or a little bit lower for a long, and then just continuing to take the same, crappy trade setup repeatedly versus actually, digesting what the market is saying, what it's doing, what's changed, and taking the next good opportunity. So I did that on Friday after taking my licks. So we'll try to see if I can continue doing that. I will be on fast markets again tomorrow, hopefully with Coach Dakota if he's feeling better. I have missed trading with him, but it was good to get back on Friday, trade with Coach Jay, and I haven't gotten a chance to sit on air with Muhammad before, so that was cool. I always love learning from new traders and hearing other strategies, how other people think about the same information I'm digesting. So it'll be cool to kind of get back in the swing of things. I'm slowly drifting back. As you guys know, I just had a kid, so I'm trying to spend less time on screen, or not on screen, but less time looking at charts, looking at screens, and more time kind of transitioning this part of my life. So slowly but surely getting back into the swing of things in the markets. But so far, we are still kind of just stuck around this 80 spot on NQ. Micro Bitcoin actually did move lower. Let's see. Actually, let's do this. There it is. Yeah, it did actually move. As soon as we got off screen or got off the chart, it did move a little bit lower. I'm not going to trade this. I was about to. I'm like, oh, I kind of want to take a long here, but I'm not going to. Let's jump back. Let's see what the Nikkei is doing. I don't look at it very often, and I don't even know what to make of this now that I'm looking at this. Let's jump to a 1 hour. I don't have my lay of the land even where we're trading. I know Coach Dakota went long. I don't know where he went long, but I know he is long. Now I'm going to see. So I want to know because I have no idea my lay of the land with this dang thing. 39.15s. Okay. So Coach Dakota got long just above that low. Good for him. I'm going to look at this on a... Okay, I see what he was playing. Okay, I get it. I could see this. Rotating back up here. Yeah, I see what he's looking at. All right, let's jump over to NQ. I want to see what this is doing. Still stuck at the 80s. I'm not seeing a whole lot I like. I was kind of optimistic because I was coming on air and we were breaking out to the upside. On NQ, I thought maybe we'd get that continuation. We kind of did. It just kind of been. We gapped up. I expected this to be a little more volatile coming out of Friday. Well, let's get to some questions then. If anyone has them, feel free to start throwing some into the chat. We will see how this evolves. Micro Bitcoin rolling over. Good thing I didn't long it. Now I kind of want to short it. If it breaks below this 94,100 spot, I guarantee it's going to go take out 9400s, 94,000s. Let's see. Nope. Bounced right off of it. All right. So let's get to some questions. If you have them in the chat, I'll start going through the couple I have. I'm sad this isn't moving. Nothing's moving. Everything's kind of just stuck where it was when we came on air. So, all right. What indicator is the horizontal bars? Are you talking about the volume profile that's here? Is the $1 million question. If you are, because I mean, that's the only horizontal bars I have on my charts. This is volume profile. This is the visible range volume profile on the right. All it's doing is giving you a visual histogram of the volume by price. So I know Dakota doesn't use this. I'm a big fan of it. It's just a different way to read similar information. He likes to read it more in candlestick patterns, at different time frames. And I prefer to use volume by price. So this is available in Topstep X, visible range. All it's going to do as you change your time frame or how many candles are on the screen, it's going to adjust the histogram to show you all of that volume based on what it's actually showing. And then these other ones are the weekly volume profiles. So if we jump to yes, this is last week's profile. So you had all of that consolidation up here near those highs. We sold down and it's showing you where all that volume took place for the previous week's session. And these are called fixed range in Topstep X. You can't pre-program it to draw these, but every week before my show at 5 p.m. when we open for Sunday Globex, I just draw it based on the previous week's candles. So you get this nice histogram for each week so that you can get an idea of, are we trading in a multi-week range? But like I said, it's just a different way to read similar information. Like I said, Dakota and I always seem to have similar levels and areas that we are interested in transacting, and we get them two completely different ways. He looks at it one way, I look at it a different way. So it's just different ways to process and identify the same type of data that the market is telling you. And then this red line, if that's what you're referring to on the horizontal line, that is just the point of control. So the highest area of volume by price in that time period. So for every week, or like for last week on ES, the most volume transacted at 6130s, roughly 6129s. So those are the only horizontal charts I have, or horizontal lines I have in my chart. So hopefully that answers your question. Otherwise, you might be talking about the Topstep X levels, Topstep daily levels. So I have the value area high, value area low, settlement, and then Hoag's weekly kickoff high and low, because I love to see what his secret sauce predictions methodology is and how it aligns with other levels that I have plotted in my longer time frame charts. So those are the only horizontal lines I have. So hopefully that answers your question. how can a beginner use or understand volume? Example, seeing volume bars spike and enters, but then the volume drops and the trade goes against. How can a beginner really decipher volume? So the logic would be volume only tells you half the story. The delta on that volume tells you the other half of that story. Because at the end of the day, volume means buyers and sellers, but which side is winning? More often than not, when you see a lot of volume necessarily out of the gate, depending on the time of the month, whatever it is, it could be a more bullish move to the upside with that high volume spike. A lot of the time, that volume can die and it might reverse. Like I said, that's where it just kind of comes down to understanding what the delta in that volume is. So which side technically is winning? Is there more sell volume, negative delta on that versus positive delta? And that can usually tell you which side is winning. But at the end of the day, there's no perfect system or way to disseminate volume, but that's kind of why I use a couple ways of looking at it. I use volume by price as well as the volume delta. And I don't mean like cumulative delta. I mean, that can also be a way to understand it a little deeper. But I'm looking at specific kind of delta in a couple different ways. I'm looking at, pulling and stacking on the DOM. I'm looking at delta-based candles where it repaints colors based on, the volume on that said candle. So there's a number of ways to look at it, but if you're just looking at total volume, you're missing a lot of the picture of what's actually happening behind a move. Even if it is high volume and then dies, it doesn't mean it's not going to pick up. You could see that sellers are still in control or are moving us further down. And then in theory, you could see a ton of volume transacting, but this is where we get into things like iceberg orders, where there's a ton of volume, but price isn't necessarily moving. That could mean that iceberg is eventually going to get blown through. So it's a good way. The good way to start learning it more is to take the next step. So understand how delta works in volume, understand what iceberg orders are, understand volume by price, things like volume profile, so that you can see a big volume spike, maybe at a low volume node, or you see a ton of volume transacting at a point of control area for, like, if you're looking at a ton of volume in 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, but price isn't necessarily moving above like this high volume area here. Well, that could mean absorption, and you could see sellers potentially stepping in. So if you were to break back down below that, that could be a good short opportunity. So like I said, based on your question, it sounds like you're only looking at maybe half the picture. So maybe look to take that next step in education and understand. If you enjoy learning volume or trading off volume, okay, so how can I enhance that? Look at things like delta in that volume. Look at things like volume by price based on that time period. So you can take it a step further is what I'm saying. What are my indicators? I think I just said a bunch of them. I mean, at least the ones on Topstep X, and then I alluded to some of the other ones that I use. Inside of is going to soon be finished Sierra chart for my personal account and for certain things I do or look at with things like I said, delta by price and some of the, delta candles that I look at. The rest is going to just be, price action and MGI is kind of the other things I really look at. My own little secret sauce of levels and things that I kind of create. So really depends, but that's pretty much all that I have on my charts is going to be MGI levels like these, volume profile, and then a few other things that I've kind of created for myself. And then a few other indicators that I use through like Order Flow Labs or other, things that help me read delta a little easier. So I don't have to stare at time in sales and the DOM 24/7. Do you think it'll be worth trading this week? What are you looking to take in? Are you looking to take anything in your live account? I am going to be trading Monday and Tuesday, maybe Tuesday. We'll see how. If it's kind of slow and choppy, I'm not interested too much in trading Christmas Eve. If it's like last year, absolutely, I will be trading at least the initial balance period, kind of that first hour. And then as volume dies, if we're not moving, I mean, I'm out, man. I'm cooking a 16-pound brisket on Christmas Day, so I got to tend to that and get things prepped and organized. So I won't be spending too much time on Tuesday. If I can get an early trade, great. If not, the markets will be back later in the week as well as in January. So as I said earlier in the show, guys, if you've had a good week, if you've had a good month, lock it up potentially until January. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, it's dangerous to trade this time period. It's just, no, man, it's New Year's Eve. It's Christmas Day. Go enjoy some time. If you celebrate Hanukkah, I believe Hanukkah starts this week too. So there's better things and there's gonna be better opportunities in January than, potentially trading the low volume that comes between the 26th and New Year's Eve. So if you get some early points tomorrow, if you catch a good trade on Christmas Eve, maybe lock it up until the following week as we head into the new year. Not necessarily, like I said, because it's just a bad week to trade. It's just focus on having some fun, relaxing, taking a few days before you come back fresh and ready for the new year. But yes, I'm going to be taking potentially trades tomorrow on my live account. We'll see how the week kind of evolves, but likely in ES. I am leaning more to ES this week. NQ has just been kind of kicking my ass a little bit. There's an afternoon trade I took last week. I took it in ES. I had a very, very, very nice day, but I took it in NQ and I got stopped out and I got pissed. So, yeah. And then I just the way I've been reading things lately, like I took a small options activity based short in SPY towards the end of the day, and that was a big winner. So it's just like I'm reading things better on the S&P lately. I'm reading order flow a little better. I'm reading time and sales a little better. NQ, it's just been tougher for me to manage lately. I don't know what it is. So if I do take trades tomorrow, it likely is going to be an ES unless an NQ opportunity really presents itself. I have no interest in kind of entering in a couple levels. So I'm going to be more of a volume-based entry type trader this week. If I do take an NQ trade on ES, I'm going to focus on what I know and how I'm reading things during the day and what I'm looking for. But yes, I will be trading at least in the early part of this week. I will be on Topstep TV on Thursday, but I don't know how much I'm going to be trading. If there is an opportunity, Thursday is going to be low volume, likely on the 26th. So we'll see if something presents itself. If not, I have no problem locking it up for the week and coming back, maybe trying to find a trade before the new year. If not, like I said, guys, January should be volatile, should be fun. Either way, when we get two-way action like we had towards the second half of last week, it's a trader's market and we can make a lot of points and you don't have to spend a lot of time at screens. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not going to overtrade this week. Hopefully we find one or two good opportunities and we move on towards the new year. That's my plan. If I don't stick to that, please punch me in the face. Can you go over the volume profile tools and show us what to look for? Sure. I know we went over it, but I can give you my settings. So I use ticks if you are trying to add this to your charts. And then I keep for ES, I keep it row size at 4. And then I keep my value area for you guys to actually see at 70%. So just a basic rule, guys, there's so much content on volume profile from a lot of smarter people than me too. So if you want to understand how I kind of use it, like I said, there's so much free stuff on YouTube that'll really explain this. But the simple aspect is we do not spend a ton of time in low volume areas. We spend a lot of time in high volume areas. So this like larger consolidation range here, look at all the value area, all this white up here and all of the candles that kind of printed there. So the way to use volume profile is in a weird way, you kind of do the Nick Dolby range play where when we're kind of in low volume areas, so the blue, the value area lows or the value area highs, you kind of not necessarily fade it, but you look to not spend time there. So that could mean one of two things. That could mean we blast right through it to go find an area of higher volume. So like if we were trading like down here at around 5900 ES, if we didn't find buyers here quickly, the logic would be we would rotate down lower to an area of higher volume. This other, little blue high volume node kind of down here. So the same is true based on what we're seeing here. That's kind of why my weekly pivot is sitting between this kind of 60-40s, 60-20s area, this little low volume nook here. That's where I'm saying I want to see buyers kind of push us above this and start to build volume here and send us higher. Because the logic would be if we can hold volume above 60-30s, we're probably going to take a trip back up toward this high volume area up here near 60-80s to 60-100s. So that's why that pivot's there. If we get above this low volume area and buyers are in control, I could see them just being, blast off to the races up toward 60-100s, 60-80s. That's kind of how we use it. That's a very simplistic example, but you kind of, if you look at like even these previous weeks, like when we're in more balanced, like D-shaped volume profiles, price just tends to be very range bound and will continue until you break out of that type of range. But when we do, we're going to find an area of higher volume. So if you kind of look back at like, hey, why did we stop where we did after the FOMC dump? Well, if you look at all this weeks of consolidation here, if I zoom out a little more and get more volume in this, why did we stop there? Well, because we flushed down and we found an area of higher volume down here towards the 5900s, 5870s, this kind of top edge of this high volume shelf here. So we rotated out of an area of lower volume and flushed in all the way and found this high time frame, high volume area. So hopefully that explains it. That makes sense and that answers your question. Like I said, there's so much content on volume profile, guys, but that's a super elementary, like 101 level of how you can kind of use it to guide your trading. And it's no different than what Dakota would probably say, because you have a series of consolidation, a lot of candlesticks based on your time frame kind of hanging down here. So he might most likely, if he was looking at ES, would have found a similar spot somewhere between kind of 5900s to probably 5850s looking at ES of just an area that could possibly lend us a bounce. So you can use candlesticks. You can use a lot of different things. Like I said, it's just a different way to look at the same type of information. Any chance TPO charts are coming to TopstepX? I actually, off the top of my head, guys, I do not know. That would be really cool. I'm a fan. I don't use them every day, but they are really good to look at. If you understand kind of, single prints and the different periods throughout the day, it's a cool way to look at same thing. Other data that we look at a different way, but just another way to visualize it. So I'm not sure if it's on the release schedule, the roadmap, or in the kind of feature request queue of things that you guys need to go in and thumbs up. But if it's not, throw it in there, man. I would love to see TPO charts in TopstepX. I want to see delta by price. I want to see a few other things, hopefully in the next year that come to TopstepX. That would be really cool to make it a better platform and more fun. And, other things that I use and other platforms being enhanced in this just makes my life easier, because then I don't have to juggle 7 things. So the more that's in here, the more I can look at. I'm all for it, but I do not know if they are coming, if they're on the roadmap. So if they're not, throw a feature request in TopstepX. And people go thumbs up it, because that's a cool feature. Do you use point of control as the magnet or target for pullbacks and breakouts? Yeah, it always can be. It's always going to act as potentially support, potentially resistance, depending on the direction. I think it always can be a magnet. It can be a good place to lighten up on a position. If you are long or short and we're drifting towards it, that's a good place to take profit. That's a good place to start covering. I would not tell you to initiate trades at points of control, because if you look at this, you have literally these last 2 weeks, the point of control is basically in the same spot. So you just kind of get chopped up. We just kind of will drift up and down around it, and it just tends to gravitate towards it. But the logic would be when we finally do break away from it, you should not be fading that move, because it's like anything else. When we're in consolidation, we make a move out of it, you should be along with that move. But it's a good place always to lighten up on trades. Like I said, take profit. They're good profit targets, but I'm not a fan of initiating trades necessarily at the point of control. I'd much rather initiate a little bit lower, because then you know where you're wrong, or a little bit higher. Usually you kind of wait for the breakdown, breakout versus entering a trade there. You kind of know if you were entering short here, if price drifts back up, you should probably get out, because you're kind of looking for that breakdown to happen quickly. What do you think about the Santa Claus rally this week? Not saying prediction, just what the levels look like in your opinion. I think we touched on it, at least what I'm looking at in ES, and I can jump over to NQ as well, since we already talked about ES. But I want to see, for Santa rally, I want to see us build above 60/40s, above this weekly pivot that I've set, and at least go make a trip up towards 6,000 SPX. That may be a tough spot to break out, especially if we don't do it early in the week, just given the low volume. I could see that acting as resistance just from an options perspective. But you need to see us build above that, go take it out, and then continuing to drift higher. If we can't get above 6,000 80s, I would expect us to just be in a kind of balanced week. But as far as last year, Christmas Eve was pretty dang violent to the downside. So as far as the Santa rally, I don't know. Did last week kind of kill any momentum that we had? We'll have to find out tomorrow in the early parts of this week. If we can kind of build momentum and get above this, you may be fine. You may get a decent move to the upside, especially as volume tends to die. We may just kind of drift up. But if we don't see that move early, I mean, who knows? It could be like last Christmas Eve and, we all should have been buying Tesla at 100 or Nvidia at whatever it was. I don't know what the stock split at this point, what it was trading at last December, but Nancy got long. So we should have all been too. Christmas Eve presented a great buying opportunity. So maybe this was that. Maybe FOMC did, and this was that low for the near term. I don't know. I'm curious to see how it may evolve in the early parts of this week. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold on a Santa rally because I would take what the Fed said seriously. I mean, the market just doesn't believe anything they say and hasn't for 2 years. But I don't know if we're going to see a ton of repositioning. Maybe we see some profit taking this year. For the end of the year, I don't know. It's really hard to make of it after this type of move and everything else going on in bond land. I don't know. I'm not as bulled up for a Santa rally as I would have been if this didn't happen. But this is potentially pretty telling, although I'd say this with a grain of salt. This whole move could have been just, options expiration shenanigans with the end of the year expiration and everything else. I don't know. We'll have to see what the New York Open is and what it looks like. I take even the overnight session with a bit of a grain of salt because we could continue to drift up here and we could hit the New York Open and they could just send us back down the elevator shaft. I have no idea. We'll see what happens. They may get their gift to potentially lighten up positions after, because they were not prepared for downsides. So maybe now they get a second chance to, get out near the all-time high in some things. I have no idea. My gut tells me we're not going to see a repeat of last Christmas Eve, but I've been wrong many times this year. I'm going to go one more. We're at an hour. And I've been talking for 2 hours straight by myself in my into the void alone, dressed as GQ Santa Claus. So we're going to wrap things up here. I'll let everybody get back to their Sunday evening. I know I'm not Coach Dakota. I took a trade. We still haven't moved. NQ is still sitting at 60/80s. So there hasn't even been a dang trade. Let's get one more. How can I manage risk? That's a loaded question. The first piece is, I guess, what are you trading? What kind of sizing have you been using? What kind of accounts do you trade on? Are you trading on Topstep? Well, Topstep, because if you are, you're already managing your risk. You're already limiting your downside capital with whatever your initial investment is into combines and XFAs. So you're at least not blowing thousands and thousands of dollars in a personal account if that's what you're doing. So the first piece is if you're not learning, or if you're not trading your own capital, the first way to manage risk is to use somebody like Topstep to learn. And it doesn't have to be, jumping right into your first combine, whatever it may be. But the biggest piece is understanding, how you trade, I guess what you're looking to getting out of this. This is a loaded question. This can be taken a lot of different ways, but the biggest way to manage risk is to cap your downside with what you're comfortable with. The first piece I would say is to, if you're still learning, if you're a beginner, is to trade micros. I traded minis like an idiot out of the gate after trading micros and sim on Thinkorswim way back in the day, and thought I was God's gift to trading because I had made like 15 grand in my first couple days trading minis, having no idea what I was doing. And then eventually the market, gave me my medicine and punched me in the face and I lost it all, including my initial investment. So I had no risk management. So that's one thing I think that's great about trading on Topstep is there is a risk management element built into it. If you're using Topstep X, you can now set that yourself. So understand if you're trading a combine, trading an XFA, is that you can cap your risk, and that risk can be managed a number of different ways. It can be the number of trades you want to take in a day. It can be a dollar amount. It can be you locking yourself out after a green day, green trade, whatever it may be. So the tools are there. But the other side of it is you have to know yourself. You have to know how you handle your emotions. That's the first piece. If you can't get your own emotions in check, whether it be from a red day, red trade, green day. And if you have a green trade, green day, and you just will continue to snowball because you're continuing to trace profit, you need to learn that about yourself and learn how to manage your own emotions before you're ready to manage your own risk. A big way to do that, it always helped me. Jared Tendler's book is great, The Mental Game of Trading. The biggest way to manage risk is to manage yourself, manage your own emotions. So if you can understand how you function in those situations, that's when you can get the best out of it. And that's when you can start to really be your own risk manager and actually understand how I can manage risk, how I need to set it for myself, because my targets are X. I'm looking to, make this type of thing in a day. I'm looking to get my first payout, whatever it is. You have to manage risk. You would manage risk differently as a beginner than I manage risk now today. Like I said, in the beginning, I didn't have risk management. I didn't understand how to do it. I didn't understand those things about myself. So that is the first key to manage risk, is understand your own emotions, how you handle situations, how you handle red days, how you handle red weeks, how do you handle drawdowns, how do you handle 5 green days in a row and almost getting to a payout, or excuse me, 4 green days in a row. I have talked to so many people that have messaged me, sent me DMs, seen it in other Discords where, you get to your 4 days of profitability of $200 days in Topstep, and on day 5, you blow the account. And you, in theory, I know someone that lost a $20,000 payout. I have lost, 5-figure payouts doing the exact same thing. And it's as good as you can get managing risk. There's always room to continue to grow, but it all goes back to managing your own emotions. So I will leave us on that. But the biggest piece to manage risk is to learn a little bit more about yourself and how you handle your own emotions when you're trading and your own emotions when you're making money or losing money, because that is job number 1, is understanding what do you need to look out for? When are you getting tilted? When do you need to walk away? When do you need to set lockouts or take time away from screens? All of those factor in my opinion, are more important than just managing risk. That is half the equation of managing risk. If not, it's the entire piece of it. Because everything just boils down to it's you against in trading, and you are your biggest enemy at times. At least I have been with, my own risk management at times. It's very easy to snowball. So I will leave you guys there. I know we've gone over an hour, so I'm going to leave it there. I hope everyone has enjoyed this substitute Santa Claus stepping in for Mr. Slow Markets himself. We wish Dakota well. I know he's starting to feel better, it sounds like. So hopefully he's back with us here on Topstep TV this week, having some fun, taking some trades, making some money, losing some money, whatever the market does show us. Hopefully we all have good weeks. I wish you all a wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate this week. I wish everybody the best. I hope everyone has a great trading week. I will see you all tomorrow morning on Fast Markets. Everyone have a wonderful evening. I hope everyone has had some fun, learned something. Probably not, but hopefully everyone had a good time. Thank you guys for tuning in. Cheers, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning.